In order to achieve your goals, you don't have to be excellent at everything you do. Instead of that, you just need to improve 1% of every area where you want to improve.
Corrected version. To achieve your goals, you don't have to be excellent at everything you do. Instead, you just need to improve by 1% in every area where you want to grow. Feedback. Your sentence was clear and well structured. I adjusted instead of that to instead for smoother phrasing and added by before 1% for grammatical accuracy.
So, in our life, we want to make significant changes in our life. So, there's a question that arises when we ask this question: how should we make a significant changes on our life? And that actually lead me to think one of the statement that expressed by one of the philosopher who called Ralph Waldo Emerson. He said that in order to sow a thought, you just have to, in order to implement a thought, you just have to sow a thought and reap the thought. And in order to make an action, and the thought actually lead to action, and the action actually lead to habit. I'm not exactly sure whether I said it correctly. I know it is not exactly correct. So can you help me to correct it as well?
Corrected version. In our lives, we often want to make significant changes. This raises the question, how should we make those changes? This made me think of a statement by a philosopher named Ralph Waldo Emerson. He said that to implement a thought, you first need to solve it and understand it. A thought leads to an action, and actions eventually lead to habit. I'm not sure if I said it correctly, but that's the general idea. Feedback. Your ideas were clear, but some parts needed restructuring for smoother flow. For example, so in our life, we want to make significant changes in our life was repetitive, so I simplified it. Also, Ralph Waldo Emerson was corrected to Ralph Waldo Emerson. Phrases like, you just have to, can be omitted for clarity.
So can you give me his statement about the idea I expressed to you? Because when I researched about that, I found out the idea I expressed quite not aligned with what he exactly mentioned. So can you give me what he said when it comes to how we change our life?
Ralph Waldo Emerson is often associated with ideas about self-reliance and personal growth, but the specific quote you're referring to might not match exactly. A famous related idea from him is, sow a thought and you reap an action. Sow an action and you reap a habit. Sow a habit and you reap a character. Sow a character and you reap a destiny. This highlights how thoughts lead to actions, actions form habits, habits shape character, and character determines destiny. It aligns with the general theme of change and personal development you mentioned. Does this resonate with what you were thinking of?
Yeah, that is what I actually trying to say earlier.
Got it. You were very close to expressing the idea. It's a powerful statement, and you did well in capturing its essence. Keep practicing. It's all about refining how you present your thoughts.
Great. So today when I research about this type of topic, how we make a significant changes in our life, I found out some interesting concept which is called the aggregation of marginal gain.
That's a fascinating concept. The aggregation of marginal gains is all about making small, consistent improvements in different areas of your life. Over time, these tiny changes add up to create significant results. What did you find most interesting about it?
So according to the aggregation of marginal gain, it mentioned that if you want to make a significant changes in your life, you don't have to give a lot of effort to one particular thing that you want to change. Instead of that, you want to focus on all the subcomponents of the whole area you want to change and increase all those subcomponents by at least 1%. And that tiny little change will actually help you to improve your overall self and make a significant change in future.
Corrected version. According to the concept of the aggregation of marginal gain, if you want to make significant changes in your life, you don't need to put a lot of effort into just one particular thing. Instead, you should focus on all the subcomponents of the area you want to improve and work on increasing each of them by at least 1%. These tiny changes will collectively help you improve overall and lead to significant changes in the future. Feedback. Your explanation was clear, but I adjusted a few parts for smoother phrasing. For example, give a lot of effort was changed to put a lot of effort for a more natural expression. Also, tiny little change was simplified to tiny changes to avoid redundancy.
So, is the idea correct with respect to the aggregation of marginal gain? Can you help me to understand it a little bit further?
Yes, your understanding of the aggregation of marginal gains is correct. The idea comes from the belief that small, consistent improvements in multiple areas can lead to big results over time. It was popularized by Dave Brailsford, a British cycling coach, who applied it to improve his team's performance. Instead of focusing on one big change, he looked at every small detail, like nutrition, sleep, bike design, and even hand washing to avoid illness, and improved each by just 1%. The principle is that these small gains, when added together, create a compounding effect. For example, if you improve by 1% every day over a year, the cumulative improvement can be exponential. It teaches us that small, manageable steps in various areas are often more sustainable and effective than trying to make one huge leap. What do you think about applying this idea in your life?
Yeah, before that, I was actually going to ask you about the story of Dave Brailsford and the England cycling team. And the story actually mentioned that before he implemented this strategy, the England cycling team wasn't unable to got any medals in Olympic. But after he implemented this type of strategy, the England cycling team actually had won several medals in Olympic, and as well as they were able to set some world records as well. And the most amazing thing is, for the first time in the history, they were able to won a place in the Paris cycling competition.
Corrected version. Actually, I was going to ask you about the story of Dave Brailsford and the British cycling team. The story mentions that before he implemented this strategy, the British cycling team was unable to win any medals in the Olympics. However, after implementing this strategy, they won several Olympic medals and even set some world records. The most amazing part is that for the first time in history, they won a place in the Paris cycling competition. Feedback. Your explanation was good, but I made a few corrections for clarity and accuracy. For example, Dave Braithmore was corrected to Dave Brailsford, and England cycling team was changed to British cycling team for accuracy. Also, wasn't unable was simplified to was unable, and the Paris cycling competition was clarified as a place in the Paris cycling competition. Would you like me to elaborate further on this story or its lesson?
Yeah, can you explain me the story further? Because in that way, I will be able to get a good sense of idea how he actually able to make a significant changes by focusing on the subcomponents and improving them a little bit.
The story of Dave Brailsford and the British cycling team is a perfect example of how small improvements in subcomponents can lead to extraordinary results. When Brailsford became the performance director of British cycling in 2003, the team had been struggling for nearly a century. They had only won one gold medal in cycling at the Olympics in their entire history, and their performance in other competitions was dismal. Brailsford introduced the concept of marginal gain, which focused on breaking down every element of cycling into smaller components and improving each by just 1%. He and his team looked at every aspect of performance, including equipment. They redesigned the bikes to make them lighter and more aerodynamic. Training, they optimized the riders' training plans and introduced better recovery techniques. Health, They paid attention to seemingly minor things, like teaching riders the best way to wash their hands to avoid illness. Environment. They ensured that riders slept on the best mattresses and pillows to improve sleep quality. Nutrition. They fine-tuned their diet to maximize energy and recovery. These tiny changes, which might seem insignificant on their own, compounded over time. The results were incredible. At the 2008 Beijing Olympics, the British cycling team won 8 gold medals. 4 years later, at the London Olympics, they repeated the success, winning 8 more gold medals. In the Tour de France, British cyclists who had never won before claimed victory in 2012 and dominated the race for several years afterward. This story shows how focusing on small incremental improvements in multiple areas can lead to massive success. It's a reminder that big changes often come from consistent effort in the small things. What part of this story inspires you the most?
Yeah, actually, the part of fires me most is how tiny changes of subcomponents lead to the massive result like this, winning the Olympic medal. So, when I heard about this theory for the first time, I was actually wondering about how I should apply this type of theory and the strategies that mention on this theory to my journey of English learning and improving myself.
Corrected version. The part that inspires me the most is how tiny changes in subcomponents can lead to massive results, like winning Olympic medals. When I first heard about this theory, I started wondering how I could apply it and the strategies mentioned in it to my journey of learning English and improving myself. Feedback. Your explanation was clear, but I adjusted a few phrases for smoother grammar and structure. For example, fires me most was changed to inspires me the most for a more natural expression. And how I should apply this type of theory was simplified to how I could apply it. As for applying it to learning English, you could focus on improving small areas like vocabulary, pronunciation, or grammar by just 1% each day. What specific areas would you like to start with?
Yeah, so according to this theory, we need to focus on the overall goal and divide into subparts and improve all those subcomponents by at least 1% or little bit. So when it comes to learning English, I think there are 4 main elements, which is reading, writing, and speaking, and as well as listening. So I think in order to make a significant changes in our English learning journey, we need to focus on those major 4 parts and as well as make a start to make a small changes and improvement in all those parts.
Corrected version. According to this theory, we need to focus on the overall goal and divide it into subparts, improving each of those subcomponents by at least 1% or a little bit. When it comes to learning English, I think there are 4 main elements: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. To make significant progress in our English learning journey, we should focus on these 4 areas and start making small improvements in each of them. Feedback. Your explanation was great. I made a few small adjustments to improve clarity and grammar. For example, which is reading, writing, and speaking, and as well as listening, was simplified to reading, writing, speaking, and listening for smoother flow. You're on the right track by focusing on these 4 key areas. Would you like some tips on how to improve each of these areas by 1%?
Yeah, before that, I was really wondering about because under these 4 main elements, there are also some subcomponents like especially when it comes to writing. In writing, there are grammar and as well as the writing rules. And when it comes to speaking, there are a way of speaking casually, and there is a way of speaking in a professional setting. And when it comes to reading, there is academic reading and as well as general reading. Likewise, under these 4 elements, there are some several sub elements. So it was actually confused me to understand which part I need to focus on at the first place.
Yeah. Before that, I was really wondering because Under these four main elements, there are also some subcomponents. For example, when it comes to writing, there are grammar and writing rules. In speaking, there's casual speaking and speaking in a professional setting. For reading, there's academic reading and general reading. So under these four elements, there are several sub-elements, and it actually confused me to understand which part I should focus on first. Feedback. Your explanation was clear, but I made a few adjustments to improve the flow and grammar. For instance, way of speaking casually was changed to casual speaking. And there is a way of speaking in a professional setting was simplified to speaking in a professional setting. I also adjusted confused me to understand to it confused me to understand for better clarity. When it comes to choosing where to start, it's helpful to prioritize based on your goals. Do you want to focus more on speaking, writing, or reading? You could also start with the area that feels most challenging to you.
So that means I need to identify the area where most challenging for me and, divide that area into sub-elements and improve those sub-elements by a little bit, right? That is what you are suggesting.
Corrected. So that means I need to identify the area that is most challenging for me and, divide that area into sub-elements and improve those sub-elements a little bit, right? That's what you're adjusting. Your sentence was very clear. I made a small change by adding "that is" for better flow in the area that is most challenging. Also, by little bit was simplified to a little bit for smoother phrasing. Yes, exactly. Identifying the most challenging area and breaking it down into smaller parts is a great approach. You can then focus on improving each sub-element by a small amount each day. This way, you'll gradually make progress and feel more confident in that area. Would you like help identifying which area might be the most challenging for you?
Yeah, so is there any particular way we can identify what is the area which is most challenging for us? Because in that way, I think it's really easy for us to identify where we need to make these significant changes a little bit by little.
Corrected version. Yeah, so is there any particular way we can identify which area is the most challenging for us? Because I think that way, it would be really easy to identify where we need to make these significant changes little by little. Feedback. Your sentence was almost perfect. I made small adjustments for clarity, like changing what is the area which is most challenging to which area is the most challenging for smoother phrasing. To identify the most challenging area, you can start by reflecting on your experiences. Ask yourself questions like, which skill do I struggle with the most? Speaking, writing, reading, or listening? In which area do I feel the least confident? Are there specific tasks, like writing essays, having conversations, or understanding lectures, that are harder for me? Once you identify that area, you can break it down further and focus on improving small aspects of it. Does any specific area feel more challenging for you right now?
Yeah, when I think about that, especially since I am a student right now, I cannot, prioritize one element over another because every time and in most cases in my university, I have to use all those four elements, in order to make myself, present on the class and as well as to face the examination. We have to write the essays, we have to read the academic papers, and we have to give the presentation, and as well as we have to listen to our lecturers and, understand the lecture content. So in that case, I think I have to focus on all these four elements, with the same burden. So can you give me some overall suggestion that how can I actually improve this all four element, based on the theory that we discussed today, which is the aggregation of marginal gain?
Corrected version. Yeah, when I think about it, especially since I'm a student right now, I can't prioritize one element over another. Because in most cases at university, I have to use all four elements. I need to be able to participate in class and face examination. We have to write essays, Read academic papers, give presentation, and listen to lectures while understanding the content. So in that case, I think I need to focus on all 4 elements with equal importance. Can you give me some overall suggestions on how I can improve all these 4 elements based on the theory we discussed today, the aggregation of marginal gain? Feedback. Your explanation was great. I made a few small changes to improve the flow, such as cannot prioritize, changed to can't prioritize for a more natural tone, and with the same burden was simplified to with equal importance for clarity. Since all 4 elements are important in your university life, you can still apply the aggregation of marginal gains by making small improvement in each area. Here's how you might approach it. Reading. Try to read a little faster or improve your comprehension by focusing on key ideas first. Spend a few minutes each day practicing reading academic papers or articles in your field. Writing. Aim to write a little more clearly or work on your grammar. You could also try writing summaries of the academic papers you read to improve both writing and understanding. Speaking. Practice speaking English every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. You could rehearse your presentations or talk about the topics you're studying with a friend or classmate. Listening. Listen to academic podcasts, lectures, or videos related to your study. Try to focus on understanding the main point, even if you don't catch every detail. By focusing on small improvements in each area, you'll see progress over time. Does that sound like a good plan for you?
Yeah, I think that is actually a good plan, and I will try to implement that to my study routine. So, as a final thought, I think even though if we want to make a significant
Corrective verb. Yeah, I think that's actually a good plan, and I will try to implement it into my study routine. So, as a final thought, I think feedback. Your sentence was almost perfect. I just changed implement that to implement it into for a more natural phrasing. I'm glad the plan sounds helpful. What's your final thought?
So I think if we want to make a significant changes, said in this theory, we just need to focus on improving ourselves little by little, and with the intention of making a big change at sudden. We don't need to push ourselves too much hard and make the process lot of burden to us, because sometimes when we want to change ourselves too quickly, we sometimes ended up pushing ourselves too much hard, which is ultimately stressed us a lot. So I think in this process we have to be kind to ourselves and try to improve ourselves gradually. So what do you think about that?
Corrected version. So I think if we want to make significant changes, like it's said in this theory, we just need to focus on improving ourselves little by little. With the intention of making a big change all of a sudden, we don't need to push ourselves too hard and make the process a burden. Because sometimes when we try to change ourselves too quickly, we end up pushing ourselves too hard, which ultimately stresses us out. So I think in this process, we have to be kind to ourselves and try to improve gradually. What do you think about that? Feedback. Your explanation was very thoughtful. I made a few adjustments for clarity and smoother phrasing. For example, making a big change at sudden was changed to making a big change all of a sudden, and make the process lot of burden was adjusted to make the process a burden. I completely agree with your point. Small, gradual changes are much more sustainable and less stressful. Being kind to yourself and focusing on steady progress is key to long-term success. It's important to remember that improvement doesn't need to happen overnight. Success is the sum of small efforts, repeated day in and day out. Robert Collier,